So during the La Sonnambula broadcast, they had Freddie De Tommaso and Juliana Gregorian stop by for an interviewing promoting their live stream of La Boheme. Yes, the yearly run of an admittedly awesome production from an admittedly awful person for a personally overrated opera. I have made it clear from day one that I don't care much for Giacomo Puccini's reoccurring opus. I find it laughable that it's considered his magnum opus, finding itself overshadowing far better operas even within his own catalog. It's not even that I think it's a bad opera, it's not. What I feel is that La Boheme is bland. It's an opera that makes me feel very little. The story feels incredibly mid, which might be more of a critique on Henri Meguer's original book, which is described as having no unifying plot. But even then, Puccini and his librettist Luigi Illica and Giuseppe Giacosa had the chance to make a more coherent plot. And in several ways, they did. The middle of the opera is seen more as a creation of the librettist, but even then it feels like we're missing something. Mimi talks about Rodolfo's jealousy in Act 3, but we don't see any seeds of it. We last see him in Act 2 at the start of a relationship with Mimi, only to skip to Mimi airing her problems to Marcello. And then we have the music. And all I hear from people is how emotional the score is. And all I hear from the score is the same Pucciniisms that drive me up a wall. But getting back to Freddie and Juliana, they were asked the usual questions to hype up the November 8th live stream of La Boheme. And one of the answers from Freddie kind of struck a chord with me. In general, they were asked about how they view their characters, and Freddie said that he viewed Rodolfo as an immature man who has trouble dealing with love and the complications that come from Mimi's condition. That makes sense. Rodolfo is part of a group that jokingly mocks their own impoverished situation, and his best friend has an awful love-hate relationship with Musetta. Sadly, the only example of such a relationship in the group until Mimi appears. Maybe he's onto something. Maybe I've been focusing on the wrong people in the opera. Maybe a rewatch is in order. But not the Met Productions. I feel like I'm too familiar with those. Besides, I might be losing something in the Met's translation, so let's go looking. Here we go. A made-in-studio version similar to how they did Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella. Okay. You know, this staging looks an awful like... Oh, god damn it. Did anyone else direct this damn thing? Oh, great. Not only do we have Franco McAwful directing, we have one of the Nazis' favorite musical puppets conducting. Fun! Alright. Sooner we start this, sooner we get this over with. This opera needs a scene between Act 2 and 3. The big problem is that Act 2 spends so much time with Marcello and Musetta's relationship that Rodolfo and Mimi take a huge backseat to the point that nothing gets established, and we're forced to take Mimi's word that there's a problem. The idea of show, don't tell. Here's how I see it going down. They're together walking through the French Quarter during the winter. Suddenly, Mimi has a coughing fit. She assures Rodolfo that she's fine, but he doesn't buy it. As he browses some wares, he overhears a couple talking about Mimi and a friend they had lost due to the same affliction she appears to have. Rodolfo finds it upsetting and doesn't know what to do. Just then, a well-off gentleman, a viscount, I guess, tries to make advances toward Mimi, but she kindly rebukes him, saying she's already with someone she dearly loves. Rodolfo sees this and even hears it. Torn by what to do, he makes up his mind and channels Marcello. He accuses her of flirting with others, causing him to have awful jealousy. He doesn't mean it, but he can't stand to watch someone suffer because of his own station in life. How long do you need for that? Maybe 20 minutes max? You could probably tack it on to the front of Act 3 and show the changing of time between then and the cold night just by adjusting the lighting and changing a couple signs. I don't know if Puccini would have combined it with an existing act, though. He wasn't really one for having multiple scenes in a single act. The only one I can think of off the top of my head was Turandot. But even then, that wasn't completely done by him. He had sketches of what he may have wanted, but they were completed by others. Speaking of sketches, there were preparations for an additional act that were kept by Illica. It involved a party the Bohemians were throwing as Musetta's furniture was about to be taken for auction after her protector refused to keep paying her rent. Musetta introduced Mimi to a Viscount, which led to jealous feelings in Rodolfo, and eventually is referenced to a Viscount when talking with Marcello in Act 3. Probably something based in the book, seeing as Ruggero Leoncavallo did the same for his own La Boheme. But I think if we're looking for a way to have Rodolfo be an idiot who doesn't know how to handle his new reality, I'd like to think mine works as well, perhaps better in hindsight. It keeps the illness in mind while also giving Rodolfo a convenient excuse to claim something else for a breakup. Would it save it for me? Well, maybe, at least story-wise. Musically, it might depend on how this new section was scored, because everything else to me was bland. Well, except for the end of Act 3. That legitimately might be one of my favorite moments in opera. So do I still hate La Boheme? Kinda, but it's more about what could have been than what was presented. It's incomplete. And given that he had time to write 3 different endings for La Rondine, easily one of my favorite operas by Puccini, it upsets me that he couldn't fill the hole in the middle of what became his most famous opera. I think in a way it's like how I couldn't ever get into Big Bang Theory. I respected what it was, but was always turned off by Sheldon.
You're looking for a job.
A menial job. Like yours.
He always came off as a more insufferable Ross Geller from Friends.
Hey, you're a doctor of gums. That's the smallest body part you can major in.
But he had none of the gawky charm that made Ross likable.
Merry Christmas!
Anyway, that's just how I feel. No ill will towards anyone that does enjoy La Boheme. I do hope you're entertained by the live stream, but considering how things are getting more expensive, I think I'll spend my 20 bucks on something else. And that's it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and be sure to help the algorithm by liking and commenting so that it can reach others like you. I'll see you next time. Take care.